longing for more. How many of us we have for time, and maybe time after time after time, we have looked at our lives, and some of us very full and busy lives, some of us very fulfilling lives, but we have looked at our lives and we've said, there's got to be more. I am very excited about this afternoon. This afternoon of all afternoons is one of my favorite afternoons of the year, because it's one of the first cuts of grass that I get to make in my yard. I love cutting grass, and so I get to mow my backyard this afternoon. The other thing I get to do is I get to watch the Masters Golf Tournament. I am very excited about the Masters Golf Tournament. Don't tell me if you are watching scores right now. Don't tell me who's in the lead, because I have a taste and I'm excited to watch it. I'm excited for a nap this afternoon, and I'm excited for men's group later on this evening. I'm excited for all of those things. All of those things fill me up, and at the very same time, I know that there is more. There has to be more. If we look at our lives, we have to recognize that there's more out there. Golf tournaments are fantastic for me to watch. Some people could care less about them, but I so very much enjoy them. And at the same time, I recognize that there has to be more. Some of you have been on winning baseball or softball or volleyball or football teams or soccer teams or whatever the competition you've been a part of. And some of you have reached the pinnacle. And some of you've got to the end of your season and you said, is that really the last game? Is that really the last race that I'm going to run? Is that really the last thing? And we look back and we say, there's got to be more. Or some of us, we have we've come to our careers and we've said, is this really it? And some of us, we live very fulfilling and very full lives, but at the same time we look and we say, there's got to be more. Turn to your neighbor and say that. There's got to be more. Go ahead. Turn to your neighbor. There has got to be more. We're going to spend 5 weeks together exploring the parable of the prodigal son. And my hope is that we might awaken together to a more full and more fulfilling life. That does not mean more in our schedules. That does not mean more success, more worldly success. But for us to think about our relationship with Jesus Christ. And for us to grow in our faith, to find fulfillment in growing in our faith. We're going to spend 5 weeks together looking for and finding our way back to God. Do I not have the screens in there for, is there a video next? Okay, yeah, great. Okay, thank you. One more, and then today we're going to ask this question, that there's got to be more. And then to ask, what more is there? Where might we find more? Today I'm going to invite you to think about the younger son in this very familiar parable. We have heard this parable. We've maybe reenacted it in Sunday school. We've heard this parable over and over and over again. But today I want to invite you to put yourself in the place of the younger son when he sets out for a distant country, because that's exactly what he's doing. He's looking for more. He's looking to his family life, he's looking to his home life, he's looking to his father, and he's looking to his brother, and he's saying, is that really it? There's got to be more. And he goes off searching for fulfillment. He goes off longing for something that he doesn't quite know. Now, this story is very familiar to many of us. We've heard this story, and some of us, it's maybe perhaps brand new, but it's one of Jesus' most popular parables, most popular teachings. And I love the Lumo Gospel Project. It's on YouTube. They're free resources. But what they've done is they have done a word-for-word reenactment or representation of the entire Gospel of Luke. And so for 3 minutes and 24 seconds, this parable, not that Jeff read it poorly, you did a great job. But just to put this in a little bit of a different perspective, or to bring it to life for us again, I want to put it in front of you, the parable of the prodigal son.
Jesus continued, "There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, 'Father, give me my share of the estate.' So he divided his property between them. long after that, the younger son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him to his field to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, "How many of my father's hired servants have food to spare, and here I am starving to death? I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants.' So he got up and went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him and kissed him. The son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his servants, 'Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' So they began to celebrate. Meanwhile, the older son was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of the servants and asked him what was going on. 'Your brother has come,' he replied, 'and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound.' The older brother became angry and refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, 'Look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours, who has squandered your property with prostitutes, comes home, you kill a fattened calf for him.' 'My son,' the father said, 'you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad, because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.'"
Longing for something, knowing that there's more out there. A few years ago, my dad and I spent 17 days hiking the Appalachian Trail, the Vermont and New Hampshire sections of the Appalachian Trail. We spent 17 days on trail and a couple days getting to Vermont and a couple days getting home from our hike. And this was back in the day when cell phones were still pretty new. And do you remember those kind of cell phones, some of you, where the battery detached from the cell phone? Some of you remember that, right? And you had a little antenna that pulled up out of the body of the cell phone. I was still a newlywed in some sense, and I can remember knowing that I was going to be without cell reception for a long time. But finding along the trail, these 17 days when we were out on the Appalachian Trail, finding time, especially on the peaks of some mountains, and putting the battery into the phone, right, and powering it on and seeing if I had connection, seeing if I had any cell service. And a few times I got to call back to Dubuque and talk to my wife. I knew that there was something out there. I longed for something. We are all longing for connection, longing for something. Songwriters have really keyed into the idea of longing, the idea of hoping for something. You finish this phrase with me here. You can't always get what. That was poor. Come on. You can't always get what. Good. You want, right? Yeah. Uh-huh. Need something out there, or in the words of Bono from YouTube, I still haven't found what I'm looking for. Right? Yeah, looking for something, or this one, looking for love in all the wrong places. Right? Longing for something, looking for something. Just what will it be that will bring fulfillment? Some of you are big fans of Tom Brady. Some of you could care less about Tom Brady. Some of you really don't like Tom Brady for the teams that he plays for right now. I'm one of those, but I admire Tom Brady, who has won so many Super Bowls. Really is a living legend among us. Back in 2015, he was interviewed by Steve Croft for 60 Minutes. Tom Brady's become a very successful superstar. Right? Nobody would argue that. And Tom Brady said this. He was looking for something greater, looking for something more. So Steve Croft was interviewed for 60 Minutes, and he said this. And at this time, he only had 3 Super Bowl rings. Only 3 Super Bowl rings. Interviewer said this. This whole experience, this whole upward trajectory, what have you learned about yourself? What kind of effect does it have on you? This is what Tom Brady said. Well, it put incredible amounts of pressure on me. When you feel like you're ultimately responsible for everyone and everything, there's a lot of pressure. Why do I have 3 Super Bowl rings and still think that there's something greater out there for me? I mean, maybe a lot of people would say, hey man, this is what it is. They said this, I reach my goal, my dreams, my life. Me, I think, God, it's got to be more than this. Can you imagine that? After winning 3 Super Bowl rings and then saying, it's got to be more than this? So Steve Croft, the interviewer, said this, well, what's the answer? And Tom Brady said, I wish I knew. I wish I knew. After finding success, I wish I knew. I wish I knew. This is a picture of Glenn Wolfe. Glenn Wolfe holds a very auspicious world record. Okay? Glenn Wolfe holds the record for being married the most times. Here's a list of his wives. I know. Been married 31 different times, looking for love, right? You know, looking for something, trying to find connection, and over and over and over again, that failing. This is really curious to me. Glenn Wolfe, he died in 1987. Lived in Southern California. He's a Baptist preacher. Believe that? So he's a Baptist preacher. By the way, Eugene and Carolyn Schulte, today they celebrated 51 years of marriage. Today is their wedding anniversary, right? And it's really wonderful. And they said, well, 31 different marriages. Unbelievable, right? Looking for something, longing for something. It's a part of who we are. And so today I want to invite us to think about where we try to find fulfillment. And many of the things that we do, we find fulfillment. We try to find fulfillment. And we recognize there's got to be more out there. But just what is it? And what will bring for you fulfillment? Lasting fulfillment. Life-changing fulfillment. Where can you find rest? In this rat race that so many of us live. This is a picture of a really famous tree up in Hamlintown, up in northern Iowa. I love when we drive up to Carrie's parents, right along the highway, off of I-35 and 69, Highway 9, whatever, Highway 9. Out in the middle of flat, fertile, northern Iowa farm country is this incredibly beautiful tree with tens of thousands of lights. It is beautiful. This year, we in our house, we tried to recreate this tree. We came up far short. I give my wife and daughter all kinds of credit for trying. What we were looking for and trying to recreate this thing. Now it's at the top of my mind because we were taking the lights off yesterday. We tried to recreate some of these things. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful tree. Up in Hamlintown, there's a beautiful tree out in front of our yard. But it just wasn't quite right. And sometimes this longing, it leads us to some really wonderful things. And sometimes this longing and this competition sometimes, this pitting of one group against another or saying, I'm better than you, it can lead to some really terrible things too. Today's the anniversary of the United States Army freeing the prisoners at Buchenwald concentration camp in 1945. And the competition that led to concentration camps was this idea that I'm better than you, and so therefore you're no longer important. And so I want to give caution to so much of the competition and so much of the pitting of one group against another, because it can lead to some incredibly tragic, horrific events. When we pursue or when we long after the wrong things. When we pursue or long after the wrong things, this is a life or death matter for you and for me. What are we pursuing? What are we longing for? Power, control, to win at all costs? What does it mean? St. Augustine, who's an early church father in the 300s, said this: our hearts are restless until they find rest in you. Say that with me. Our hearts are restless until they find rest in you. The story of the prodigal son is an incredibly powerful and time-tested parable that teaches us some really harsh realities. The son who was longing for something, he was looking for something, he didn't realize what he had in front of him. He already had the love and grace and acceptance and inclusion and riches that his father had. He already had that gift, but he went looking for something else. This is a life or death thing for you and me. When you and I pursue all of those other things, and sometimes we get into this really nasty competition to say, my truck is bigger than your truck. Or we say, my car is better than your car. Or my house is better than your house. Whatever it is, right? My team is better than your team. And it can lead down some really tragic places. Until we recognize this. Our hearts are restless. Until they find rest in you. Now, this is a message that you and I need to hear. This is absolutely a message that your neighbor needs to hear too. This is absolutely a message that your coworker needs to hear, your classmate needs to hear. That when we pursue the wrong things, we will not find fulfillment. Our hearts will be restless. Those words were spoken, that prayer was prayed 1,700 years ago. And it's still true today. Our hearts are restless until they find rest in you. Go back to that. Our hearts are restless until they find rest in you. So how might you and I live our lives longing after and pursuing and recognizing that there's got to be more and that there is more in Jesus Christ? Let's pray. Holy, good, and gracious God, our hearts are restless until they find rest in you. Lord, teach us in this parable that we already have the feast coming to us. We already have fullness of life in you. God, help us to pursue you, to not look for love in all the wrong places. God, help us to find rest in you. Lord, help us to live our lives this day, this week ahead of us, as if we long for you, as if we find our peace and fulfillment in you. Help us to live our lives this day that we might be an example to our neighbors, to our friends, to our coworkers, to our classmates, so that they might know that we have found the one whom we are looking for. We have found you, Jesus, our resurrected Lord. God, all this we pray in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. We're going to sing our song of response, Let It Echo, Heaven